Okay, welcome back to the channel. My review of Northampton Saints versus Bordeaux-Bègles. Sorry this one's a little bit delayed. There's a reason for that. I was at the game. I watched the game live in the game stadium. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of left the game thinking, what the hell happened? Not in terms of the result. I feel like, it looked like Bordeaux should have won the game. But I don't think I fully really understood the game when I was there in terms of what had happened and why it happened. So I rewatched the game. I've just done that now. This is Sunday afternoon. I've rewatched the game in its fullality, its fulltility, its brim. And I've written tons of notes going through this. And it was fascinating to watch again from like a bird's eye point of view or a TV point of view with all the different angles. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. So I'll start before the game even started, and I'm going to talk about selection. I'm not going to talk about Bordeaux's selection because I think Bordeaux's selection was great. I think the starting 15 that should have been the starting 15 was the starting 15, and there's not too many questions in terms of the different options they had available to them, who would play where, etc. But however, Northampton, I think, were, they've been very unlucky with injuries. And they had to try and find a way to make a team that was going to be the most competitive while also kind of working around the injuries that they have in their squad. The obvious the obvious thing that you could see if you looked at the team sheets beforehand is that you got Furbank starting, just coming back from an injury that he re-aggravated in his forearm. You've got Slightholme, who's only just come back from an injury on the bench. And so it was an obvious weakness right there to have both a very recently previously injured fullback playing, as well as a very recently injured wing as a replacement for those back three. I can only speak about what I would do in that coaching situation. However, I'm not a coach, and I would always go for the conservative estimate of putting in, even if they're way less experienced and have done way less at this level, always have a healthy alternative to what you have. It just felt like having Furbank in the team and Slightholme in the team, covering the bench and the starting positions, just felt like it was a bit too much of a risk. But I don't blame the decision for it. I think if you look through Northampton's squad, which I did, and you look at the alternatives that they have, obviously Hendy's injured, but Ewan Baker, who's had 4 appearances, Will Glister, 11 appearances, Jorg Makepeace Cubist, that's not a real name, 9 appearances. Tom Seabrook is probably the one with the most amount of appearances at 32 appearances for the team. So you can understand why Slightholme and Furbank are in this team, in terms of their exposure to this level of rugby, being in a Champions Cup final. You put in a newish player to come in and take one of those positions, whether it's on the bench or if it's starting. And it could be something that mentally makes or breaks a new player. They go in there, they have a terrible game, the amount of damage that could do to a player's psyche. But then I think there's the flip side. If you put him in there, he has a magnificent game. And, much like it has for Pollock, it could catapult them into higher and higher altitudes of where their career's going. So I can't really criticise the decision. I would have just said, if it was me, I would have decided to put someone at least healthy on the bench to cover that back three. Overall, I don't think it made it a huge difference. I think there was a lot of ramshackling, not a word, moving around of the back three to cover fullback at different occasions, moving people in and out, making sure that Litchfield, who eventually came on as that back's replacement, could kind of slot around and slurp around. Don't know why I said slurp, but they could all kind of move around and cover those positions defensively and in an attack, and it wasn't that much of an issue. I just feel like maybe, if you had someone that was more in tune and playing 15 or 11, ready to go and healthy, it could have had a bit of a difference. But in the big picture, I don't think it made a big difference to this game. I still think the Northampton managed without both Furbank and Slightholme in a very big way. I think the players that filled in those positions did. So that's just a little bit I'd like to talk about with regards to selection. So what did I kind of see on my second replay through of the game? And I'm saying I'm feeling like I'm conjoining sentences there that don't need to be conjoined. What did I watch in the second playthrough? I think Bordeaux, first of all, before I say any of what I'm going to say here, I'm going to just set out the table. We're going to go meta-analysis above. Bigger themes of the game. What happened. Then we'll go into the details and little bits and pieces. This is all under the umbrella that if things were different, maybe Northampton would have won. But everything that happened, I think Bordeaux were the more deserved team. They're obviously the more talented team on paper, that goes without saying. But I think they definitely had a better game plan than Northampton had. We'll talk about that from like a meta-analysis in terms of the story of the game and why what happened. And then we're going to go into the details of that. But I want to just kind of like highlight that to start off with, because the details that I'll get into, I think maybe will speak contrary to those points. But I don't think they should. I think I should really outline right at the front. Congratulations to Bordeaux, well-deserving winners. And yeah, they should have won the game. How did they win this game? What I noticed specifically is that Bordeaux played not very differently, but differently to how I usually see them play. What is a Bordeaux team? A Bordeaux team is one that will run from anywhere on the pitch, that loves the counter-attack, will try and capitalise on mistakes anywhere on the pitch as well and run it the length. They'll also be comfortable, with possession and holding the ball and powering it over all the way from their own 22 all the way to the opposition try line. That's just my opinion of what Bordeaux do. I think today, I'm about to say today, but yesterday, I think what Bordeaux did very differently is that they were incredibly comfortable playing possession ball between the 22s, and then when it was in either of the other 22s, whether it was their own 22 or the opposition's 22, I think they looked to kick. In your own 22, it's obvious why you're doing that. You know, you're clearing out, you're trying to move the ball up the pitch so that even if you're giving it away for a line out, you're pushing the opposition back so that the pressure's on them to get out of their own 22. But even when they entered the opposition 22, unless it was just like, guys, it's on, we're going to get the try here, they looked to grubber through. They looked to get through and try and like force Northampton to try and have a line out within their own 22 so they could put pressure on them. I mean, I think this was really summarised in the first half where they had a counter-attack. It was in their own 22. It was off of a knock-on. Jalabert actually kicks it forward when it's on the outside, and I think he did that on purpose. He wanted to pin Northampton in their own half. Now, why is this? I think Bordeaux, realised that the blitz defence against Northampton was only going to go so far. Everyone that knows about the blitz defence now knows that the opportunities for where the spaces are on the pitch to exploit it on the outside. And one of my copyright strikes for my channel has just gone dead today. So I'm going to take a risk here and I'm going to show a photo of what Bordeaux did to counter to the blitz defence. So blitz defence comes on the inside, the space is on the outside. But what I noticed Bordeaux doing, and I'll hopefully show it in a photo here, or maybe the whole screen, is they always made sure that they had sweepers coming from either the other side of, like the blind side of where the ruck was, to come back and cover those tackles. That's what they did. They made sure that they always had 2 or 3 guys coming back to sweep round, so that when the blitz defence came on the inside, they had players that could sweep back round and tackle any players that went out on the outside and try to take advantage of that space. Now, the reason that they wanted to get out of their own 22 as well, and they didn't want to play within their own 22, is that this tactic does not work when the opposition, the attacking players, have the ball within your 22 and you're defending. You can't get those sweeper defenders round and quick enough and down into the corners to stop that from being effective. They'll just they can't get around quick enough, and if they do get around quick enough, you've then just left a gap in the middle of the field that will take too long to reorganise and get some blitz defence right in the middle again. And I thought you could see that. I thought Bordeaux genuinely looked really nervous in defence when they got within their own 22. I think Northampton looked great when they had possession within the 22. So much so that, they opted to go for 3 points, I think more often than I think they should have. And this sounds counterintuitive. If you've watched my channel for any extent of time, I'm always critical of just going for the corner when you have a penalty, just because you feel like it's like a mental edge that you can get over your opposition for scoring 7 points. I've never been big on that. But what I am big on is seeing evidence of something that you can exploit and taking advantage of it. And I think if Northampton maybe have just noticed what was going on in this defensive setup of Bordeaux and that it didn't work within their own 22, I think they would have been way more keen just to like get a penalty. Great, we're going for the corner because I think we can go for this. Because they did. The few opportunities that they did do it, you know, they've hardly got into the 22 against Bordeaux. But when they did, they scored, like, pretty regularly, right? That was just something I think that Northampton missed in the moment. It's something that, as I was talking about, their game planning just wasn't at the same level of Bordeaux's in terms of being able to counter what they were doing to themselves. And I think, big picture, I think that's why Bordeaux won the game. They had a specific game plan to neutralise what Northampton do so well, aka get round that blitz defence, get it on the outside, and it worked. They also made sure to keep Northampton with possession down in their own half. So within those 222s, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but within those 222s, Bordeaux wanted the ball, they wanted to keep the ball, they didn't kick the ball, and if they kicked the ball, it was going to go off the pitch. It was not going to go back for a counter-attack. And if it did, it always looked like it was a mistake. That's always when Northampton looked more dangerous. So I have to say, this looks like it was game planning. So excellent stuff. I think that's why Bordeaux won the game. I'm more sure now that I've watched this, okay? Now I've watched it a second time over. That's what I think what happened, right? Okay, let's talk about some little details here. So, the injury to Furbank, where Barros hits him with his knee. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think this is a card. It's not a card. You know, you can review it, you can do what you want, but I'll put a picture up here again to show this. It is clear that, you know, Barros is just going for the ball, because if Barros picks and collects that ball as quickly as possible, there's no defenders at home. It's a try to Bordeaux. So it's unfortunate for Furbank. You hate to see it, but any rugby fan or anyone watching this game that's calling for more than this, I'm sorry, this is not a card. This is a rugby incident. I think it was called right at the game. Yeah, nothing else to say about that. The second try by Bordeaux was an excellent solo effort by Jalabert. He steps the entire pack, which sucks in all the defenders, and just leaves it all on the outside for his forward to finish the job. And I'll just take a moment here as well to talk about Jalabert's performance. I think Jalabert, this is peak Jalabert. This is what Jalabert is his absolute best. You know, the thing with Jalabert is I think he's so good with running with the ball in hand, and he has such confidence that, you know, he has such a range of what he can be in a game, whether he's like, he can either be like the best player in the world, or sometimes when everything's going wrong, you just want him to be like, just stop what you're doing, pack your bags, let's put in some safe option here at 10. Yesterday, we got the best version of Jalabert. It was so good. And it wasn't just for like what he's expected to do in terms of like kicking, running with the ball, that try I just talked about setting up. But the third try was set up first by a kick that was bad by him, so fair enough. But what he did after that is he went into a ruck, outcompeted two forwards to rip the ball off, spun out, and then offloaded it to someone on the wing to go and finish a try. Like, you know, so often I feel like we compliment players for like things that they're meant to be good at, and it's, you compliment them for like feats of like doing what they're good at, but to an extreme level. So what I'm thinking of is like Bielle-Biarrey, you know, so quick that he gets into the corner before anybody else or outpaces people. Like, but that's what wingers are meant to do, right? I think a true compliment sometimes of a player is when they do things that you would just not expect them to do. And that is a perfect example, I think, of Jalabert doing something that you would just be like, you know, if you went and competed with a ruck and you didn't even get the ball, you wouldn't even blink twice. You wouldn't be like, yeah, you know, you got to try harder. No, that's not the case. He went in there, he fought, he grabbed the ball, he ripped it from two forwards, and he set it up. Excellent game. Other players that had excellent games. Luku, I think, had an excellent game. There's just something about his ability to get the ball out a little bit quicker than what it was like a year ago. So in the Six Nations this year, he was great. But those of us with slightly longer memories remember that Luku in the Six Nations the year before was not so good when Dupont was on his sevens holiday. And I just felt like the speed at how he got the ball out of the back of rucks was just not there. Not good. But today, he was excellent. And I think that kind of ties into another point that I have, is that another reason why Bordeaux won this game is because I think they won the physical battle. Maybe not in the scrum, where I think Northampton held up magnificently, and they won penalties with their substitute props against that Bordeaux pack was sensational. When I'm talking about the physical side of the game, I'm talking about loose play, running with the ball. It always felt like Bordeaux, when they had a forward running it, they always made a metre or two, which always put Northampton on the back foot. And I felt like in defence, Bordeaux always, hit Northampton backwards, and they always managed to drive past the ruck, which just kept the ball so slow at the back of rucks for Northampton, which I think was a big reason why their attack was another reason why that wasn't firing on all cylinders as well. Although I would say I think Mitchell had an amazing game considering the quality of ball that he had at the back of that ruck. He was still fantastic. I think Bordeaux just fully won the physical battle in that regard. They very much, just pushed Northampton about in certain instances. And Northampton, to give them credit, they were in this game. They wanted to be in this game. They threw their bodies at this. But, it gets to a certain point where it's like, who wants it more? And if both teams want it an equal amount, which I think Northampton really wanted this game, they wanted to win it. They looked like they wanted to win it, And Bordeaux, I think they looked like they wanted to win it. Both teams really wanted this. And when you have that kind of equal effort and no one can give more effort, unfortunately, the advantage just goes to the team that's bigger, and Bordeaux are bigger. They're a big pack, These are a big set of forwards. And, if they're putting in the same effort that your pack are doing, but your pack's smaller, ipso facto, that's the difference. And I think it was unfortunate given the amount of effort that Northampton put in, especially in the second half. The defensive efforts in Northampton in the second half were superb. But Bordeaux wanted it. They physically wanted it. They kept making mistakes in terms of going for tries, like knock-ons, etc. But because they just physically wanted to be in this game, they wanted to do all the dirty stuff and drive forwards, and they wanted the collisions. And I think that was, another reason why they won this game. Spoken a little bit about Bielle-Biarrey, just talking about an example of him being quick. Boy, this was a drop in form for him, but at least this, in the off-season later gives him something to work on. His kicking was not good. He also forward passed once, which was called, and other times which wasn't called and led to a Bordeaux try. But I think it was a down game for him. We give credit to these players when they do well. I think we've got to call out when maybe they haven't been up to the level that they've been before. But yeah, a bit of a not so good game for him. If we're going to do that for Bordeaux, we're going to do that for Northampton. And boy, for all the talk of Henry Pollock coming into this game, bit of a non-issue, to be honest. Not really in the game. And I think there's a couple of reasons for this, and it's difficult to know without being within Northampton's squad, camp, weekly preparation, which I'll never be in, but there's a few speculations I can have for this. I think the first speculation you can have is, was Henry Pollock carrying an injury and therefore he wasn't flying around the field like he usually does? Could be something. It's something that we wouldn't know about. But I think something that I think the real factor, from my perspective, if I had to take a real solid guess of what's happening here, is I think Pollock was moved to 8. I guess Augustus was injured and so he couldn't play. And I think he was asked to do a very different role in that 8 shirt. I think, especially being in the ground, this was what was really cool it was what was really cool to get an insight on, is when I was watching Pollock moving around the field, whenever Northampton kind of had structured attacking play, he always kind of found himself, I think, towards the wings. I think that was on purpose. They wanted to exploit space on that wing space for him to kind of take an offload for a winger and take it in for a try or something along those lines. And you can imagine if he's been moved to 8, Phil Dowson or Sam Vesti takes him aside and they say, listen, Henry Pollock, weirdly using his full name, but listen, Henry Pollock, I want you to go hang out on the wings. That's where I want you to be, to take advantage of any space that we can get out there, take an offload, take it in. And that stops him from doing what he did against Leinster, which was just work rate all around the pitch, constantly working round. But what I would say is I think that once you get to half-time and you realise that's not working, as I was talking about Bordeaux's defensive structure being set up to kind of counter that outside attacking opportunity that's usually there for the Blitz. You know, I would expect the coaching to be like, okay, Henry, right, this is not working. I want you to go ham. You have the leashes off. You just go do whatever you need to do to get around the park, turn it over. You know, you got 8 on your shirt, but you're going to be playing 7, 8, 7, 6, 15, 12, any position that you are on the pitch, and just go ham. And that didn't happen in the second half either. So, got to call that out as well if I'm going to call out Bielle-Biarrey. We're gonna talk about now. We're gonna talk about refereeing and decisions. Okay. First off, we're going to talk about one very specific issue, and then we're going to talk about the refereeing in general. So, DRB. I think I've got a photo of this as well, so I'll put this up. He gets a yellow card for this challenge on Northampton's second rower. Can't remember his name off the top of my head while I'm just doing this live. But what you can see from the photo is that he is a very large man, this Northampton second rower. And there is no mitigation in my eyes of why this should not be a straight red. He's gone head high, the shoulders hit the head, there's no mitigation whatsoever. I think this was a terrible call. I don't even know if it was called live during the game. I think the TMO needed to get involved. And it was just a yellow card. There was no bunker review. And I think that was appalling. I think it was an appalling decision amongst many others. But I feel like I needed to call that out specifically because it happened in a point in the game where there was still so much time left. And if Bordeaux had a red card, it could have changed the entire game. It could have been that impactful. And I just feel like Northampton fans are probably going to be feeling like they've been kicked in the teeth with that. There's no mitigation, you know. And I know we're trying to scale it back where, we're trying to keep these yellow and red cards from interfering with the game. But when you have a clear-cut example of like a player running with balls still pretty upright, he doesn't slip, he doesn't step, and then you've got a tackler going in and he's upright and his shoulder hits his head, and the guy he's tackling is like 7'2", like. What clearer example do you have to have that that's a red card? I don't know, you know? Still need to work out what we're doing with these cards. And that leads me on to the refereeing in general. And it makes me sad to say this, because I think Nika is one of the better, if not one of the best referees in the world right now. It's evidenced in the fact that he's going to be refereeing, I think, the 3rd test for the British and Irish Lions. It's a huge deal to do that, to have that. That's usually the deciding test, unless obviously one side runs away with it. So he's a really good referee, but I can't do this review without talking about, I think, what a bad performance he put forward. And I think this was an advantage again of watching the game a second time round, because I knew that in the game when I was watching it there in the stadium, I knew it wasn't good. It gave me the ability to kind of write down all of the different occasions that I could catch that I thought that he either missed it or he messed up a decision. And I'll just go through the list because it's simpler to do that, to just give you, like, it shows you I have the evidence to back up what I'm talking about. The first one, and this is controversial, so I'll just say this is the only one that is questionable, but I think the block on Freeman when he tried to kick it through, I think that was a block. You got 2 players coming together. You could call it either way. It's debatable. You know, they could be standing still. That's the only debatable one. And what you'll notice when I go through this list is that it is on both sides. So there was a missed late challenge on Luku. There's a missed high tackle by Mitchell. There was he missed the forward pass by Bielle-Biarrey. That needs to be corrected by the TMO. The sideline judge also missed it. He missed Slightham holding on in a ruck, which he should have been penalised against. He missed a shoulder to the head on Lockett. That wasn't even reviewed by the TMO. I've put dairy here, or diary, I don't know. Oh, missed the Diaby, it was also correct. He missed the Diaby high challenge. He needed the TMO to call it, as we've already talked about. And he also gets the call wrong when he has the full ability to take as much time as he needs to do it. He missed the deliberate knock-on and a yellow card. The deliberate knock-on got called, I think, by the TMO, and the yellow card then was not produced for God knows what reason, as it was an attacking position. He missed a yellow card on Freeman. Basically, it was obvious, I think, to everyone in the stadium that Freeman should have been given a yellow card. He just called it a penalty. The TMO had to step in again, and it was given a yellow card. That should have been an easy one to get right. He missed the forward pass by Langdon for Pollock's try, although, you know, if you ask me, I don't think it was forward. As well as the sideline judge missing it. They also missed, in the same instance of play, Pollock missing the pullback. They also missed calls disrupting the play, which was eventually what got called by the TMO. They missed the challenge on Mofana, and the TMO had to get involved to correct it. They missed the line-out where Bordeaux definitely interfered with the lift. They missed a knock-on by Bielle-Biarrey on the driving maul, which happened right in front of him. They needed the TMO to get involved in that as well. They missed Mofana taking Hutchinson by the neck in a ruck, which happened right in front of him. But apparently because there wasn't a twist, that was seemingly that didn't make it an issue. It was the same in the first half. There was a Bordeaux player that got wrapped by the neck, but because it wasn't a twist, it wasn't an issue. Both of those made no sense to me. They miss a forward pass. They missed then another forward pass. Both of those forward passes by Bordeaux ultimately led to a scoring play by them to take them to 28-20, which you could argue cancelled the game out. They got one new rule right in terms of playing the 9 from 1 metre within the maul, so that was good. But then they missed a completely different a different new rule that you can't just dive in a ball 5 metres outside of a ruck. A Northampton player did that, he didn't get penalised for it. He missed going off feet in a ruck by Bordeaux, which happened right in front of him. And he also missed a tackle in the air that was just a second before that, and he needed the TMO to come in to correct him. Once I lay it out like that, and you can see and I'm not just picking, I'm not being a biased Englishman, there are both sides of Northampton and Bordeaux. There were so many missed calls, so many. And it's frustrating because, so many things in there that could have changed the game, could have made things different. But it is what it is, Look, he wasn't on his game. He wasn't on his game. There may be reasons for why he wasn't on his game. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate. But all the examples I've given you, I think, are probably evidence that the refereeing was not good. But that's it. That's a negative. We're going to end on a positive. First time I've ever been to the Principality Stadium. Boy, is the Principality Stadium cool. Everyone says, I've always kind of read or heard from other people that everyone says the Principality is the best rugby stadium in the world. And when you ask them, they just go, I don't know, it's just the best rugby stadium in the world. So I had to go there and experience it myself to have my own opinion. And when I went there, experienced it myself and had my own opinion, I'll give you the reasons why it's good. And I think one of it is that it's situated right in the city centre. And what that does is it just makes all of the pubs and bars and the atmosphere around it, the whole city just feels like it's overtaken by rugby. The bars and pubs are so close, they're a 5-minute walk from the stadium. So people were there drinking from midday. I was there drinking from midday. It was great. It was very fucking enjoyable. And then, it's very easy to just walk straight into the stadium and then you walk back out again. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows with this stadium, and so I'm going to give you the fair analysis and where the negatives are with this stadium, okay? Negatives. Food. No food options. My God. They served me a hot dog that looked like a hot dog, but when I ate through it, I was hungry half an hour later. It felt like it had been inflated with air. I think they had pumped air into my hot dog to make it not a reasonable meal. Not kidding. That's a legit accusation. I think you pumped my hot dog full of air. I want less air in my hot dogs. I want some filling food, and I want some other food options, and then more littered around. That's one thing you can improve. Okay. What else is there? Beer selection. Not good, dude. Not good enough. Okay. You've got Murphy's, which is someone goes, oh, can I have a Guinness? Oh, we got a Murphy's. And you go, oh, all right, I'll drink that. That's your only choice of ale at all, right? And if you don't want that, it's Cruz Campo. And I think maybe they had something else that was a lager, but option's not good. Needs to be improved. Get a better deal with a better company. You've got Tiny Rebel Brewery just down the corner. Surely there's got to be something you can set up there, If Tottenham Hotspur have got Brewdog, is it Brewdog that they've got in their own stadium? No, it's the guys that do neck oil. Can't remember their name. Beavertown, that's it. If they've got them in there and they've got brewery in there, you've got Tiny Rebel literally opposite the road from you in the stadium. Have some sort of agreement in there. The beer choices are bad. While you're at it, get some more food trucks in there. But I would say the atmosphere inside this stadium was insane. The way that the seats are set up are like incredibly vertical, so we were on the bottom set, and then it felt like you were kind of like overhanged, like with seats over you, and that kind of like really focused you into the pitch. That was really cool as well. So that was it. That's it. That's my review. That's it. I don't have anything else to say. Lot of detail. I hate to think how long this review is going to be and how long it's going to take me to edit, but it is what it is. And I hope you enjoyed the game wherever you are. And that's it. I'm done talking now.